What if I told you guys that there's a secret weapon to legally discharging debt in 2025? Alright? Now, most people don't know about it, but after this video, I'm going to teach you the tools to essentially discharge debt. Alright? Now, first things first, man. Here's my promise to you. Number one, I'm going to teach you guys, I'm going to teach you the powerful laws that I use to ethically discharge debt. And number two, I'm going to give you the step-by-step guide on how to apply this secret weapon. All right. Now, before we dive into this video, this is not legal advice. All right. If you're a person who does not believe in this information I'm about to talk about, if you're a person who doesn't want to overstand the information, do not execute on this, please. All right. Now, if you're a person that believes in this, everything I'm going to be telling you is music to your ears. If you've been tapped into this information, everything that I'm going to talk about is going to be music to your ears. Now, first things first, the problem with debt, okay? One of the things that kind of affect us when it comes to debt is the fact that the interest rates are rising, the fact that, debt collectors are aggressive, the fact that it can lead to financial stress. And essentially, this is probably one of the most primary things that kind of makes us feel away when it comes to debt, okay? But I want you to know that you are not powerless. And if anything, you have more power than any debt collector, okay? If you want to talk about your student loans, your mortgages, right? We talk about debt collectors, okay? So knowing this fact, knowing that there's a problem with debt, knowing that the fact that, the United States is bankrupt, we'll talk about that, knowing the fact that debt is unreal, knowing these facts puts debt collectors in a position where they cannot prove the debt. And I talk a lot about invalidating debts. I talk about discharging debts. I talk about using the power of consumer law. All right. So I'm about to show you how to challenge and discharge debt legally and ethically. Okay. So first things first, man, the secret weapon is the use of the FDCPA, which is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and House Joint Resolution 192. Now, if you don't know anything about House Joint Resolution 192, I would suggest you look that up. All right. I may put it on my screen, but as a matter of fact, I'll put it on my screen here or here. All right. Now, the reason why these tools are effective is, number one, the FDCPA forces debt collectors to prove their claims. Okay. And number two, House Joint Resolution prevents unlawful collection practices and protects you as a consumer. Because in House Joint Resolution 192, they essentially, and it's the whole premise of why we're even having this conversation. How I even dived into consumer law is because I read House Joint Resolution 192. And if you read it, you probably, will have the same exact mindset that I do. Okay? So, step one, when it comes to exercising these things I'm about to talk about, number one, you want to validate every debt. All right? Now, obviously, a debt that I typically tell people as a disclaimer, start with debts that you personally don't care to have a relationship with. Don't do any debts that may cut your lights off, that may repossess your vehicle, unless you take these concepts that I say and you take these concepts serious and you seriously understand the knowledge, understand the laws, and understand me. Okay? So this is how you validate debt. We're going to I always talk about 15 USC 1692G. All right. I have a video on 15 USC 1692G, but what you want to look for when you are challenging debt is you want them to provide proof of the debt. And by law, you can actually challenge a creditor or challenge a debt collector on the proof of the debt. All right. Here's what to look for. And this is written in 15 USC 1692G. All right. The original creditor details. You want to know who they say is the original creditor. Now, for those of you that are tapped into the Truth in Lending Act and understand that, we all know that the original creditor is not Capital One, not that debt collector, okay? The original creditor is you, because a consumer doing a consumer credit transaction, they extend credit, right, to themselves. And I'm talking slow because I'm just trying to, piece these things together for you. But what is a original creditor? Under the Truth in Lending Act, the Truth in Lending Act says that the original creditor is a natural person or an organization, a natural person or a corporation. All right. And you'll say, well, dang, are we even that? Well, if you're living and breathing, right? I had to show y'all some guns. If you're living and breathing and you and I, and you're physically seeing this, you are a natural living person. Okay. And number two, if you have an SSN, all right, that is connected to a governmental entity or a business. Okay. So to make it make sense, you dig me? Your straw man is an entity, almost like an LLC. Okay. Very similar to Capital One, Bank of America. All right. So not only that, but you want them to break down the amount owed legally, and you want them to provide proof of their authority to collect on a debt. Okay. Now, we talked about the statutes of limitations. We talk about many different things that will prove the authority of that. But out of all of this, that original creditor fact, they cannot prove. Okay. Let's just say they prove every single thing in a debt disclosure letter. And you can go on ChatGPT and have them create a debt disclosure letter. But if they cannot prove that, or they cannot show that, guess what? They are not providing the proper proof that they have the authority to collect on a debt. Okay? So here's a key takeaway. If there is no proof, there's no payment. If you go into court of law and you speak to a judge and you're going up against another person, I don't care if you committed the crime. If the plaintiff or the person on the opposite end cannot prove it, then you did not do it. Okay? Step 2, understand the statutes of limitations. All right? Each state has different statutes of limitations. And essentially, if to explain how statutes of limitations work, debts have a legal time frame for collections. Okay? And you want to make sure you understand your state's laws to see if the debt is time framed. All right. In Florida, the statute of limitations on any and all debt is 3 years. Now, another thing is when you start to admit, or when you make a promise to pay something, the statute of limitation resets. Or if you do pay something, it resets. So understanding the statute of limitations in your state can further enhance this process as well. Okay. Step 3, this is how you're going to leverage House Joint Resolution 192. Okay. Number 1, you want to explain the context of House Joint Resolution 192 in your debt validation letters. Okay. Number 1, we're going to talk about how it abolished the gold standard and prevented creditors from demanding payment in specific terms. As a matter of fact, I'll probably bring it up right now. You know what I mean? Uh-oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Drop that down. Okay. Test. Bring this closer. So, House Joint Resolution 192, on June 5th, 1933, Congress enacted House Joint Resolution 192 to suspend the gold standard and to abrogate the gold clause. This resolution declared that whereas the holding and dealing of gold affects the public interest and therefore subject to proper regulation and restriction, whereas the existing emergency has disclosed that the provisions of the obligations which purport to give the obligee a right to require payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency are inconsistent with the declared policy of Congress in the payments of debt. So let's just unpack that real quick, okay? it says that, well, number one, this has been since 1933. Okay, so it's almost 100 years. We're in 2025. Number two, they suspended the gold standard. What is the gold standard? At some point, we had to basically use gold to pay for things. Okay, gold was the only currency. All right. Now, it also talks about how the holding and dealing in gold affects the public interest. Well, first of all, the holding and dealing of gold affects the public interest. When we go back to how, we exchanged money, or how we got credit back in the day, we would take actual gold ingots and we would transfer it to a bank teller, or we would give it to a bank teller. And what they would do is they would give us notes instead, of giving us gold. All right. So we can talk about the same concept, how banks go to the Federal Reserve to get Federal Reserve notes, which is now the dollar. Okay. Back in the day, instead of us carrying gold ingots around, you feel me? They decided to give us a note with the amount of the gold ingot. You know what I mean? So if you put in, you know what I mean? Let's just say $10,000 worth of gold ingots, they would make sure to give you $10,000 of notes to you. But it got to a point where banks were keeping the gold, or people was leaving their gold with the banks. All right. So essentially, it says, therefore, subject to proper regulation and restriction, and whereas the existing emergency has disclosed that the provisions of the obligations will purport to give the obligee a right to require payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency are inconsistent with the declared policy of Congress. So first things first, the existing emergency. What is the existing emergency? The United States going bankrupt. And then the inconsistent with the declared policy of Congress in the payment of debts, basically saying, hey, if we're not paying our debts, we can't force you guys to. All right. Now, this also says this resolution declared that any obligation requiring payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency or in any amount in money policy, and every obligation herefore or hereafter incurred shall be discharged upon payment, dollar for dollar, in any kind of coin or currency in which at the time of payment is legal tender for public and private debts. Okay? You can even go to Stanek versus White. The court explained the legal distinction between the words payment and discharge. Okay? There's a distinction between a debt discharged and a debt paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of a discharge. Okay? Something of the original vitality of the debt continues to exist, which may be transferred. Even though the transferee takes it subjects to its disability incident, I can't read, to the discharge, the fact that it carries something which may be consideration for a new promise to pay, so as to make an otherwise worthless promise a legal obligation, makes it subject of transfer by assignment. Okay? Thus, it is clear that as a result of House Joint Resolution 192, and from that day forward, June 5th, 1933, no one has been able to pay a debt. All right? So we'll kind of just stop right there real quick. Let's bring it back. So I bring up that fact, okay? And you guys can go and look up House Joint Resolution 192, okay? But discharging is not you like getting rid of debt. It's transferring the obligation from one party to the next. You dig me? So essentially, how do you apply this? You want to challenge debt collectors to prove their claims that aligns with lawful legal tender laws. Okay? Okay, yes, you may be able to prove this. You may be able to prove that. But look, now I want you to prove how this align, how you guys don't fall under the jurisdiction of House Joint Resolution 192. If you include this in your letters, if you're able to prove this stuff, I want you to prove how you are not under the jurisdiction of House Joint Resolution 192 when Congress clearly said that no one can pay debts. All right. Step 4, you want to leverage non-responses from debt collectors. I talk about how you're supposed to communicate with debt collectors all the time, but the first thing you want to do is when you send, the reason why you want to challenge them on these things is because they're unable to prove it. They're unable to respond sufficiently. So if they don't respond sufficiently, you want to make sure you challenge them when they do not respond. When they don't respond and they don't provide the proof, they acquiesce to whatever it is that you're saying. Okay? So essentially what you want to do is when they don't respond, you want to challenge them on that. You want to enforce your previous letter through a fault and dishonor letter and give them an opportunity to cure. All right? You give them, you want to make sure you dispute it as much as possible to continue to be in honor. I would say good rule of thumb, or taking them through the administrative process from the first initial letter to fault and dishonor to a default notice. Once they default, you are in grounds of even suing them for non-response. But the whole point of me teaching you this is so that you can get this stuff off your credit report. All right. So what you want to do is you want to also send this non-response evidence to the credit bureaus. Okay. You also want to demand the removal on unverifiable debts from your credit report. Okay. Because essentially, when the debt collector is being silent, it actually works in your favor. People always say, well, they ignored me. They this, that, and the third. Well, good. That's what you want. They ignored you because they cannot answer it. Because if they answered it incorrectly or try to give you false and misleading information, then they'll be under criminal liability under 15 U.S.C. 1611. All right? You're supposed to know these laws. And if they act like they don't know these laws, when they should, if you're a business owner, if I know these laws as a consumer, then you, being a debt collector, should know these laws. All right? Step 5, you want to make sure to document everything. All right? You want to make sure that the debt collector does not get away with get away with anything. Document everything that they send you. Document everything you sent. Document when you sent it. Okay? Keep copies. Use certified mail. All right? Make sure you make multiple copies of the collector responses. And essentially, the reason why you would do this is because let's just say they were to take you to court. You want to present this evidence in court. It's going to strengthen your case. Let's just say you want to take them to court. You bring all the documentary evidence that proves you trying to move in honor and dispute on the debt. Okay? Because by law, they are supposed to respond. You also put in your letters, hey, I sent the letter on this date and I did not get a response. And this is my second time sending you guys a letter, and it is now January 18th. All right? And I'm expecting a response in 10 days. 10 days they don't respond. Boom. It's January 28th and I have not received a response. All right, I sent the letter on January 18th. And if you're very specific and you're really diving into the information that you're supposed to put in your supposed to put in your letters, and you're very detailed in documenting everything, you can walk into court and you won't even have to say a word other than present your letters. Okay? And better yet, you can essentially, if you do that, you can just read your letters. All right. Now, what I can do is I can actually show you how someone in my school community was able to use these strategies to be able to, discharge their debt. Okay. Now, I won't pull up everything, but let me go ahead and boom, boom, boom. Okay. My guy, George, okay, he said, I am sharing an administrative process I successfully used to dispute a $50,000 debt claim by Navient. The documents include legal terminology, relevant case law, proper formatting for certified mailing. This is a historical example from approximately 5 years ago. The process itself took around 2 years, and the debt was eventually reflected as paid in full on my credit report with no further communication from Navient. Okay? And he put his letters here. So for the people that are part of my school community or want to be a part of my school community to be able to see this, click the link down below so you're able to get access to it. All right? But essentially, he put his full packet here, the whole communication process between him and the debt collector, between him and Navient. And if you want to tap into this and be able to see this, but he was able to discharge a $50,000 debt. Okay? So if he was able to do it, guess what? So can you. A lot of people are afraid of doing this process. A lot of people don't want to take action on these processes. But again, if a small town guy George is able to do it by sending a couple of letters, all right? And now the credit bureaus are reflecting it as paid in full, then you can too, all right? And lastly, get well versed in this information, all right? You want to take, debt collection serious. You want to take the information I'm talking about serious. You want to make sure to study the House Joint Resolution 192. You want to make sure to get connected in communities that are actually taking action on this stuff. All right, I get it. I don't know what to do next. I don't know what to send next. Perfect. This is why I put together the Complete Debt Guide. All right, the Complete Debt Guide is only $47, or you can tap into the school community. Now, if you guys tap into this, you'll be able to get that one-on-one instruction directly by me, teaching you the exact same process that George used, okay? And the beauty about this is, you can have it for a lifetime, all right? So again, if you want to be the next success story, if you want to take debt seriously, if you want to be in a position to where you are now taking debt collectors to task, you want to make sure you check out the links down below. All right. Another thing, I heard some recent news from, one of my favorite artists from the DMV, Lil Zelly. You feel me? Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a huge fan of him. Been watching him for a while, for the last couple of years, and his it definitely weighed heavy. All right, so we're just gonna have a quick moment of silence for him. Rest in peace, Lil Zelly, man. Appreciate you guys for watching this video. Down below, check out the links, and I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.